Welcome to No Romance Without Finance. Today's guest is Maya Lau. She is the creator, host, and executive producer of the podcast Other People's Pockets, produced by Pushkin Industries and Little Everywhere. She's an award-winning former investigative reporter for the Los Angeles Times and the Advocate newspaper in Louisiana. Her work led to the ouster of the warden of the notorious Angelo prison in Louisiana and helped her spur new laws that made disciplinary files more transparent in California. In this episode, Maya talks about her podcast, Other People's Pockets, and why salary transparency and discussions are necessary for everyone. She also talks about the necessity of financial transparency before marriage, public proposals, and the financial burdens of weddings. Welcome, Maya, to the show. Hi, Maya. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited because I really do absolutely love your podcast, Other People's Pockets. And the reason I love it is because it talks about things that we don't talk about, which is how much money other people make, how much money other people have. It's such a taboo topic, right? We are so afraid to talk about, our salaries. We're so afraid to talk about, what we pay for things. It's just a really taboo topic. And I think that you really bring that to light when you do a podcast like this. And you're also a journalist. So you really know how to bring it out in people. So tell me how and why you started this podcast.
Thank you so much, by the way. Yeah, I started it because I just wanted to have these conversations with people. It started
Mhm.
around a time that I was actually transitioning out of being a newspaper journalist at the LA Times. And in my personal life, I was having a lot of conversations with people who'd left journalism to find out what did they do? How did they remix their skills? Would there possibly be a post journalism life for me? And part of
Mhm.
all those conversations was very literally, how much money do you make now? Because I
Right.
didn't want to start a new career only to find out it would make the same or less than I was already making. So I just found that those conversations were so interesting. Whenever I would tell my husband about them later, he was so curious to know the actual number of how much people were making. And I felt like I really want to have these conversations all the time. I want to have a podcast about this, and I want to talk to non-journalists and, people who make
Mhm.
money in interesting ways. So I feel like it's a little bit like Zillow, where we love to kind of peer inside people's homes. We all wonder the amount that people make. All of us do.
Right.
And
Right.
it's becoming more and more an okay thing to talk about, with talking about salary transparency among employees in a
Mhm.
workplace, in order to
Right.
organize, in order to share information. I think just generationally, the younger you are, it's more okay to talk about this. So it felt like it was coming at a time where this was by no means new, but more of a thing that we can and should talk about. So yeah, it's just my natural nosiness, and feeling like money is a way into also meeting someone and finding more about their values and their path and their history. It's
Mhm.
not just, let's get out your pay stub and go line by line and talk about, just the numbers, but it's the numbers are a way of shedding a light on everything else that might be going on in someone's life.
Right. And I love that. And since you've been talking to people about money and their money, why do you think there is such a taboo about talking about how much people make? Why do you think there's such a taboo around talking about, well, especially at work, how much other people make? Do you think that it's just something that we feel like it's impolite, or do you think it's a bigger conspiracy? So, if people don't know how much the other person makes, then they're not going to ask for more money. What do you think it is?
Well, I think that in workplaces, you have some bosses, which, by the way, I believe this is illegal, but some employers tell their employees, or at least suggest, you're not supposed to talk about how much you make. We're a family here.
Hmm.
And those are all tactics to get people to not share information and ask for more money. Because
Right.
knowledge is power. So that's kind of why
Absolutely.
that happens. But I think that on an individual level, it's multifold. Some people grew up in a family where you don't talk about this, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about sex, you don't talk about
Hmm.
money, it's rude. And at the same time, I think that it can be hard to hear the truth about how much other people make. It's a little bit like seeing someone else in their bathing suit or naked. Sometimes it's like, I didn't
Right.
need to see that. You know, like
Yeah.
it can be hard to hear that your friend makes a lot more than you do,
Mhm.
and you feel like, I work just as hard. This isn't fair. This doesn't make me feel good. It kind of can reveal all the cracks in our society when you realize, oh wow, public teachers really don't make enough, and that's really not okay. And
Sure.
it kind of just is TMI sometimes. So I think that it's hard to talk about because you don't want to create further divisions and rifts between you and your friends or whatever.
Mhm.
But hopefully, if you have enough understanding and if you can be curious about it instead of judgmental about it, I think that there's room for becoming more comfortable with it.
So, do you suggest that people talk about money or not talk about it? Because yeah,
Oh, absolutely,
there
talk about
right,
it.
right, because yes, there is that feeling of like, God, this person makes more than me, right? And you may feel bad about yourself because you don't make as much or whatnot, but I always use that as fuel to want to make more money, right? I would be looking, I'm like, you mean this schlep makes more money than me? Like, what are you talking about? Okay, so what do I need to do? How do I need to level up in order to make as much money as this person? So, can you please tell us a little bit about that? Because I know that there's listeners out there that want to make more money and they feel like crap because they don't. And a lot of times, we use the fact that other people make more money as making us feel like a victim. We victimize ourselves and we don't like them. Like all of a sudden when someone makes a lot of money, we're like they're the bad guy. You're making a lot of money on the backs of poor people. You're exploiting people and that's not always the case.
Yeah, I think that everyone reacts really differently. Some people find it easy to look at another person and just use that as fuel for motivation. Other people
Mhm.
aren't like that. You know, it that
Right.
doesn't do it for them and they need motivation other ways. I think that if I always try to lead with curiosity. Like whenever I feel like I'm being judgmental or scared about something, I try to say, okay, there's a way that I could be judgmental or scared, or there's a way that I can be curious and be like, I want to know
Mhm.
more. I just tell me more. And maybe I'll still end up at the same conclusion that they shouldn't be paid that much, but at least I have some more information.
Mhm.
I think that I do think that people should talk about this more. I think that it's a muscle that you develop when you first start
Mhm.
using any new muscle. It feels bad. You want to stop. Your body's telling you no. And
Right.
over time, it becomes easier and you find ways that it can work for you. In terms of people feeling bad about not making enough, I mean, look, it's not always their fault. There are, like I said, public school teachers. There's
Mhm.
so many jobs where, unfortunately, our society does not economically value them as highly. Childcare providers, so
Sure.
many jobs. And it's not your fault. You know, it is systematic. But you can say, for me, it was important to say, you know what, I've done this job as a newspaper journalist for X number of years. I feel
Mhm.
like a traitor leaving it, but it's okay to do a job for a certain amount of time and then move on. Like you're not a bad person for wanting to leave your career and make more money or staying in your career and finding a way to make more money on the side or move up in your organization. So I think that it's important to realize there's two things. One, it's never entirely anyone's fault how much they make. And then
Mhm.
it's also good to say, okay, so what can I learn from this person? And especially I think it's important to, like I did talking to former journalists, to talk to people who were formerly in your field. So, say, like, you are a social worker, you're really frustrated how little you make. Talk to former social workers who are now making more, and just find
Mhm.
those threads so that you can feel like, oh, I could parlay my skills into something that's adjacent to what I already know, that is in line with my values, and that does work that I like to do, but maybe makes a bit more. I think that there's always ways to, like I like to say, remix your skills.
So I just want to push back just a little bit on something that you said. And you were saying that it's not ever anybody's fault how much money they make. And I just want to push back a little on that because I think life is about choices. Okay. And so when you decide that you want to be a social worker, or, and I was an attorney. When I was an attorney, I was a prosecutor. I decided I wanted to be a prosecutor. I was making $30,000 a year. We're living in Chicago. I was broke, right? With, $160,000 worth of student loans. I made that choice, right? So in one aspect of it, it is your fault. And fault is the wrong word. I just think that, you do make choices as to what your career path is going to be. If you don't like how much money you are making it's a trade-off, right? So if it's something that aligns with your values and it's not that much money, then you've made that decision, and you can't be upset because you're not making that much money, because that's just what it is. If, like you were saying, if you want to make more, there are people that were social workers, for example, that are parlaying their skills into different things, and they're making more money. So I I just want to push back and let you push back at what I just said, as far as whether you do think that, don't people have choices? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, I think it's a question of how much we place the burden on everyone's individual choices versus acknowledging that there are larger factors involved. I don't think that it's wrong for somebody who, say, is a daycare worker. Like I have a child, she's 3, she's been in
Hmm.
daycare, she's now in preschool. Arguably, there's almost no job that is more important than that, in the sense of
Yes.
someone's taking care of my child.
Yes.
They have control of whether she's alive or not, what she learns
Correct.
all day. The fact that they're not like, I want them to be compensated at 100K a year. I,
Right.
I
Right.
value their work
Yes.
so
Yes.
much.
Correct.
But it's okay if they feel irritated, that they're like, "Look, the work I do is so important.
Hmm.
Why am I not paid more?" You know? I
Yeah.
get it. Like, I don't think that it's
Right.
like, "Well, then you should just, leave and go do something else," necessarily, if they
Okay.
love their work. And I think we live in an ecosystem in which we need people to do those jobs. What if
Absolutely.
nobody wanted to be a childcare worker at all,
No,
ever?
absolutely.
And then we
Right.
don't have, not everybody can be an entrepreneur or be an influencer and do this and that. Like, we need people to do certain jobs, and there's different times in their life, not for, necessarily forever in their life. But so I think that we live in a world where there's an ecosystem that is required, that people do different jobs. And it's great. Like, you want them to love that job, right?
Right.
But it's okay if they love the job and also say, you know what, given how important my job is, I think I should be paid more. But for whatever, I've heard economists describe childcare in particular as like a part of our economy that doesn't, it doesn't follow the laws of capitalism. Like the value
Hmm.
that it actually provides does not meet
Yes.
up with the money that
Correct.
it
That is
generates for people.
absolutely
So
true.
I
Absolutely
I
true.
don't, in that case, I wouldn't say like, well, like, you made a
Yeah.
choice and you should just, either suck it up or leave. I would say it's okay that you feel that way. And it's
Hmm.
also okay that you look ahead 5 years and think, do I still want to be doing this? Is there a path forward for me? Is there a way that I can make the money I want to make in life? I think that all of that is okay, and all of this kind of tension and stickiness that we're talking about is real life, and these are the conversations that so many people are having with themselves, with their partners, about like, I want to do work I believe in, but what is my life going to look like if I continue on this path?
Sure. And for me, I had to leave being a prosecutor because I just wasn't making enough money, period. I mean, I knew I loved that job. That was the best job
Hmm.
I've ever had in my life. It
And I'm
aligned
glad.
with my
I
values.
imagine you're glad that you did do it for a time.
Yes, yes, I'm glad I did do
Like
it, and I said for the longest time that if I ever won the lottery, I would go back in a second, and I would. because I really, really enjoyed the job. And, talk about a job that, as far as like, the economist was talking about, underpaid jobs, being a prosecutor, I mean, you are putting away people that threaten our society, right? That threaten people's lives. And I was in the sex crimes unit. So I was putting for children. So I
Oh
was
yeah.
putting away pedophiles, okay, making $30,000 a year. So if that's not important work, I don't know what is. And I think that there are jobs like that yeah, definitely should be paid more, but it just wasn't. So I was like, okay, I really need to make a transition because I just couldn't afford to live. And I think that
Hmm.
it's really important for people to understand that, it is a choice. I just don't want people to have a victim mentality around it, because I think it's important for people to understand that ultimately you do have control over your own destiny. And, you can, if this isn't the right situation for you, you can parlay your skills into something where you can make more money if that is an objective for you.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about salary transparency in the workplace, because I talk about that a lot, and that's very important to me because we still have a gender pay gap. And I was at a conference, and they were talking about how there was this woman that was talking about, well, we shouldn't even tell women that they need to be better negotiators. We shouldn't tell women that they need to be asking for a raise. We shouldn't be telling women that they need to be doing any of these things, because this puts the onus on the woman to ask for more money. What we need to do is we need to make sure that the corporations are paying women just as much as they are paying the men. Okay. And I want to get your thoughts on that. Where do you think the gender pay gap comes from? And whose responsibility is it to close that gender pay gap?
I think it comes from women not being valued as much for their labor.
Hmm.
I think that like in the other question, I think it's a mix of both. I think that I would never tell a friend, like a female friend, like, don't ask for more, just wait, wait for your corporation to
Hmm.
catch up and pay you more. Um, I think every person has to be proactive and say, okay, this is my life. This is how much I'm
Right.
getting paid. I deserve to get paid X amount because of X factors. And this
Right.
is just basic equity. This is the work I provide. This is the value I provide. But yes, I do think that the onus should not only be on the woman or women in general to ask for more.
Hmm.
I think that leaders of corporations, like the way, honestly, the way to keep employees happy is generally pretty simple. Like pay people what they're worth and don't
Hmm.
have huge disparities in pay based on race and gender and everything else. That should be a basic thing at the top, to do a study of how you're paying people. And if you find disparities, to correct them. That's
Right.
basic corporate governance. So yes, I think that that is the most important thing. But yes, I think that also, would I, tell my friends like you should ask for a raise tomorrow? Yeah. Um, but yeah, I don't think that it should be only like, well, she didn't ask for a raise, so like,
Correct.
she
Yes.
she should have
Yes.
asked.
I think the burden is on the company and also on the employee. So yes, the company does have to get with the times and pay people equal for the same amount of work. Okay, I do think that, but we've seen in the past 20 years, okay, the gender pay gap has increased just very, very small percentages, or decrease, I guess I should say, very, very small percentages. So when we're leaving it to the companies to do it, it's proven that it's not happening at the rate that we need it to happen. So we also need to take control of our destinies, take control of the things that we can take control of, and ask for that raise. And that's why I think it's so important to have salary transparency in the workplace,
I
because
lost you for a second. I don't
I
know.
and
Oh,
for
there you are.
me
Okay. Okay,
and for,
sorry, you were frozen. Now you're back. Sorry.
oh, it's okay. It's okay. So let's go. that's why I think having transparency and salary transparency in the workplace is so important, because what happens is that we don't know how much someone else is making, and we just think, okay, well, this is what I deserve. And I know that places that I've worked, I found out that my male counterparts whose asses I was kicking at work, and we were a sales team, right? So it was just numbers as far as who was kicking whose ass. It wasn't like I was just thinking I was doing it. Were making more money than me. And I wasn't about to have that. So I would go and I would fight for a raise. But I also think that one thing that's important is for people to understand that asking for a raise, you have to show that you're deserving of a raise. And saying that so and so makes more than me is not the right reason to ask for a raise, right? You have to show your value. You have to show what you've done. So, you really, as women, we have to become very good at boasting about ourselves, about talking about our accomplishments, what we've done right in the past year, and why we're deserving, rather than, well, Bob just makes more money than me. Because that's not going to get us a raise, and that's not a really good reason to ask for a raise. Would you agree?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think that whenever you're asking for something, whether it's a raise or something else in life, putting the focus on someone else, like, well, because it's a Bob, or
Right.
that it's a distraction, and it's not a very
Yes.
good argument. You want to make yourself seem like somebody that someone wants to give a raise to, like, hey,
Right.
I've done all this work. And also it's about your potential, and they always say that men are able to get a raise based on their potential, whereas women
Hmm.
feel like they have to have already proven themselves to even get a raise. And so I would
Correct.
say it's showing, here's what I've done, and also here's what I plan to do, here's my vision, here's why you should want my brain on this topic, because I'm going to continue to do good work that you have even seen yet.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, I agree that asking for a raise is a delicate. It's its own delicate art, where you may
Hmm.
feel and know that you are being underpaid, that there's inequity. I would say that's a sort of a last ditch, like, it should be about you and your work.
Hmm.
Now, if they're going to continue to ignore that, they should be put on notice in some way that you are aware of other people's salaries. And, there's a way of
Sure.
kind of
Sure.
letting them know that you are aware of what other people are being paid. And isn't that illegal? Like, I
Right. Right.
but that should be kind of more in the back of their mind, as we
Hmm.
don't want a legal problem.
Right.
And you are giving them an easy, feel good way of avoiding any problem by saying, look, this is the good work I did. Also, I love working here. Like, that's a thing that I tell people, um, in asking for a raise. It's not, I'm aggrieved and, this is what I did and I should, it's, hey, I really like working here and I want to keep working here. And so, in order to do that, let's make this relationship work for both of us. Like, that should be the vibe.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Fantastic advice. Fantastic. And now that we've tackled the workplace, let's talk about finances in relationships, because this podcast is called No Romance Without Finance. And I am so against people even contemplating marriage, even contemplating spending the rest of their lives with someone without knowing everything there is to know about this person's financial state. Agree or disagree, Maya?
Agree.
Okay.
I I can't say that I did a forensic analysis of my husband, of my husband's finances before I married him, but it was a conversation, and it always has been an open conversation for us. And um, I have all of my views on proposals, and how the classic the
Let's hear
classic
them.
idea. Well, I
Let's hear them.
just always my greatest fear always before I got married. I don't have to worry about it now. um,
Mm-hmm.
my greatest fear was being proposed to in public without
Really?
ever having had a conversation about marriage. Like I always felt, when someone's on the jumbotron at a stadium and it's clearly a surprise, I always felt so nervous for those women. Like,
Me too.
oh my god, how awkward. Because um I mean, I really just think it's so crazy that this is changing obviously, but the classic idea of, "Oh my god, it was so romantic. He surprised me. We've never talked about marriage, but I said yes." Like that, in no other situation would you make a major financial decision, a major business transaction, which is what marriage is,
Yes.
just on the spot. Like someone like, "Hey, do you want to buy this company? Yes or no right now?" Like, no, never. Do you want to buy this house? You've never seen it before. You're going to have to live in it for a long time. Do you want it? Yes or no right now in front of all these people? It's so weird to me. Um, and I think that there's probably so many people who've been proposed to that it was kind of like, I have to say yes, right? Like, what are you going to do? Say no? Um, so
Absolutely.
I and thankfully I did not get proposed to in that way. I also firstly think it's rude because it's like it's not treating the person being proposed to as a real human being who has thoughts and might want to mull this over and has, you know, it's just like as if like you're just a thing. Like of course you're going to say yes.
Right.
Um so yeah, I think it's really important. I also think it's interesting to think about how when people get divorced, there's often divorce lawyers involved. There's a meticulous accounting of assets and splitting them up and legal documents. And why don't we do that before marriage? I mean, I'm not saying it needs to be adversarial or feel kind of like cold, but yeah, there should be an accounting of, okay, wait, so this is going to be a business transaction basically. We're kind of going into the business of life together.
Yes.
What is your debt? What is your credit score? What is this going to look like for us? What are your spending habits? What are your views on money? I think all of that should be a conversation, even in the kind of realm of we don't know if we want to get married yet, but we're thinking about the concept of marriage together. So, yeah, I think that that's really important.
I love, love, love that you're saying this because I've always said this too. Because deciding to spend the rest of your life with someone is really the biggest decision you will ever make in your life, right? And it is a business decision more than it is a romantic decision. And when we just think about marriage in itself, marriage started out as a business transaction. It had nothing to do with love, it had nothing to do with romance. And that's what people do not understand. And, marriage, easy to get into, hard to get out. When you're getting into a marriage, no one talks about, oh, how much money do you have? What do you have in this account? What do you have? You don't have to bring all that stuff to the table. But the second you're getting a divorce, to your point, there's divorce attorneys, there's accountants. All of a sudden that comes into play, right? We need to do that up front. We need to figure out what is happening with this person and what is going to happen to our finances way in the beginning of the relationship, and then decide to say yes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the jumbotron thing, oh my god. While everyone is giggling and being giddy around me, I'm like, are you
I'm like,
fucking kidding
seriously,
me?
I'm like, is
Yeah.
everyone seeing how crazy this is and how
Yes.
nervous we should feel for the person being proposed to? And
Yes.
I don't want to take away their joy. Like, if they really are happy to be proposed to in that
Yes.
way, that's great. But I feel nervous. I feel like,
Right. Me too.
um,
Me too.
so
I,
yeah.
Yeah, I've never ever I've never liked that, and I've always thought that that was actually very degrading to women, because it just assumes that she's going to say yes. Because if you
Yeah.
didn't
Well,
assume
because
she
she
would
doesn't have
say
a mind
yeah,
of her own. Like, of
right,
course, like, it's every woman's dream to get married. Like, no, it's not.
right,
I had somebody
right,
recently, somebody who's a bit older, come to me and say, "I think I'm gonna ask so and so to marry me." And I was like, "So have you guys talked about marriage at all?" "No." "I think you need to just bring up the topic." And
right,
they did. And thank God they took my advice and didn't ask. They brought up the concept, and it turned out that the person actually doesn't really want to get married, but really wants to be with them.
right.
And that's
Great.
an important conversation for them to have. And how embarrassing and how hurtful it could have been if they just said, "Do you want to marry me?" you know.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. And, it's so presumptuous that the woman's going to say yes, because if you didn't think that she was going to say yes, you would be putting yourself in a position to be embarrassed in front of
all these
20,000 people,
people,
right?
right?
So you're assuming she's going to say yes. So yes,
Yeah.
those types of just proposals, and just, proposals in general, where the man has to get down on his knees and all of that, is just that the historical references about that, and how women react to these proposals really bother me, because it's always the woman who's like crying, acting like she won the damn lottery, like, oh my god, this is the best thing that could possibly
Like,
happen to me
someone
in
chose
life.
me in life.
Yes,
Oh my god,
yes,
thank God. I was
yes,
finally,
yes,
it's
this is
like,
the end all be all for me,
right.
and
And also,
yeah,
I also had a thing about the ring, like the idea that he's already chosen the ring,
yep.
the design, like, and I'm just supposed to be like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah,
this is the ring I wanna wear on my hand." Like, "No, I wanna design the ring with you," or,
right,
like,
right.
yeah,
And
so,
they think that it's rude. They think that it's rude if you don't like the ring,
right.
They're like, "Oh, you're just supposed to say yes." So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's a huge thing that we women need to get over, is our need and our desire to be proposed to, because that's just a brainwashing that's been happening to us women for, hundreds of thousands of years, actually, that, we have to be chosen by a man, and if we're not, we're not good enough. So,
Well, and also the emphasis that people put on weddings in general and on this beginning,
yes, let's
spending
get into
so much
that.
money on a wedding. Look, I've been in love. I know what it's like to wanna, like, I want a big gesture. I also really believe in rites of passage. I think it's really important, if you want to have a wedding that you like and have your friends and family there. I do. And I did, and it was great. But we didn't go into debt for it. And I don't think you should go into debt for it. And, similar to having a child, the beginning is just the beginning, like, having a kid is
Yes.
not about that expensive, cool stroller you got. It's really
Mhm.
not. It changes so much. They could turn 13, and then there's a whole new set of challenges. And it's really about this journey. And I think it's really interesting, the emphasis people put on weddings. Sometimes, the parents get super involved, and it's really kind of the parents' party.
Right.
I think that this idea of going into any kind of massive long-term debt for a wedding, that's a horrible way to start your financial life with someone else.
Absolutely.
And for us, my husband and I got married in New Orleans at a friend's house, so the venue was free, and we were able
Amazing.
to shut down the street too. So we kind of had a block
Oh,
party,
cool.
um, and it was nice. I mean, I felt like the most important thing is there's food for everyone, there's drink, and
Mhm.
there's music and dancing. That's really all
Right.
people need.
That's it.
We
Yeah.
spent a total of $18,000, and got a little bit of help from my parents and from his parents. But then we had, I think we had a balance on our credit card for a few months, and then we were able to pay it off. And
Okay.
there were times when I actually afterward was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, my wedding happened and that's it. That's the only time that'll ever happen. And well, I would have liked if we had a videographer, which was going to be like $5,000, or I would have liked
Right,
if,
right.
like we had this or that, and I'm never going to have that. But I don't feel that way anymore. And I feel like
Good.
a
Good.
videographer, honestly, though, not that I would want to pay $5,000, but certain things like that's about memories I do think are
Yeah.
important. But we had a
Yeah.
lot of great photos. And yeah, in the end, I'm like, moving on to our other
Yes.
financial goals.
You're
And there are
$5,000
ways,
richer.
yeah, what, yay. But yeah, there's ways of still having the people you want there, finding a venue that's cheap. I mean, there are ways if you want to have the wedding you want to have, I
Yes.
think without going into long-term debt.
Yeah, and most people go into long-term debt, or if they have the money, I mean, unless I always say, unless you have the money to be able to buy a house and have the wedding at the same time, you should not have that wedding. That's the rule, I think. Like, you should be able to, if you should be able to have the money to put a down payment on a house. If you do, and then whatever extra money you have, that's what you spend on a wedding. That's really, if you think about it, that's the logical way to do it, because so many people start off their lives in debt. And that is
Yeah.
not the way you want to start off your life. And trust me, I know, I am Persian. We are all about the show. We are all about, look at the show, look at the car I drive, look at the purse I have, look at the party I threw, look at my house. That's the way we've been raised. And that is such a horrible way to think through things. And I remember this was a few months ago. This person came to me because I'm in finance, and I provide financing for mergers and acquisitions. So if someone wants to buy a company, or a company wants to buy another company, I assess their credit worthiness, and I assess whether we're going to give them the loan. And this guy comes in, and anytime I see someone pulling up in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, I'm like, he's not going to qualify. Guarantee he's not going to
Yeah.
qualify. I just know it. I just
Yeah.
know it. And he pulls up he pulls up in a Ferrari. I knew he wasn't going to qualify because I've seen this before. We sit down, we're talking, and I just got married at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I definitely knew then he wasn't going to qualify, because this guy is all about show. And when I looked at his financials, I kid you not, Maya, this dude had $1,300 in his bank account.
In
$1,300 with
all of his
living,
assets, like
and
all of,
yeah,
yeah.
living paycheck to paycheck, right? And just had just spent, I don't know, I think it was like $400,000 or $500,000 on his wedding, right?
Wait,
Cleared out. Yes,
$500,000?
that's how much it costs to get married at the Beverly Hills Hotel with 300-400 people.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Cleared out all his money, so everyone can say, wow, look at the wedding Farhad had. That's not his name, I'm just saying, it was not the Persian name, but look at the wedding he had, and look how beautiful it was, and look at whatever. But guess what? Are these people here right now helping you buy this business? No, they're not. All those people that told you what a great, wedding you had, all the people that are patting you on the back because you have a Ferrari, and all the looks that you're getting, all of that, those people aren't here helping you buy a damn business. So you need to just get out of my office, because you're wasting my time, because you have $1,300 in your bank account.
What do you
So
recommend for people who really do have that family pressure to have, pretty nice wedding? They want to show off a little bit, but they also want to be smart with their money. Like, what do you say when
uh,
there's that intense cultural pressure?
they have to have the balls to say no. Period. I mean, you have
No
to
to
have
all
the
of it, or do a little
no,
bit of
you
it
you can
and
do a very small intimate wedding. Have it, like you were saying, at somebody's house, or have it in a very small venue. It doesn't have to be big. Again, I I don't think there's anything wrong with a rite of passage. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to have a party and celebrate with your
Mhm.
friends. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you have to understand how much you can afford. I mean, he spent, like I said, $500,000 on that wedding. He could have spent $50,000, right? And had $450,000 left to put toward buying a business, which would have helped him in his future.
Totally.
Correct?
Yeah, I
So
agree.
So instead
Yeah.
of doing that, he chose the other option to show off, and now he's screwed. So that's, that's what I want to tell people, is that you have to just really think through who are you showing off for? Because the people
Mhm.
that you're showing off for, they're not going to be there when you need that money. I'm telling you, they're not going to be there to pay off your debt. All the pats in the
No.
back and your ego getting puffed up, that's not going to pay your debt. That's not going to help you in your life. That's not going to help you in your finances. So I am just going to get off my soapbox now and there,
Yeah.
Maya, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. I really do love your podcast. I've listened to it, and I think it's so cool that you get people to talk about their finances, because it's such a taboo topic. I think that we should be more comfortable doing that. And one thing is that I want to tell women out there is that we shouldn't be shy about talking about our finances. There have been times where people have asked me how much I made, and I've been very hesitant to even talk about it. But now I'm proud of it. Now I'm proud of it, because I'm like, this is how much I make. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, that's how much you make? And I'm like, yeah. And I've worked hard for it, damn it. Thank you for being on the podcast. We
Sure.
really
Thank you
loved
so
having you
much.
on. Please come back. We would love to have you on. We can talk about other things. I feel like I can talk to you forever about these things. And the listeners, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast, to rate it. That is the only way that we keep this podcast going. And until next time, never forget that a man is not a financial planner.